Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Happy New Year to you and all our residents. I want to thank my council members for coming out and supporting me and all of the employees. I don't know if the announcement that we made wasn't sufficient enough, or the fact that 6 years has lapsed since the mayor has been able to give a state of the city. In 2012, when the emergency manager came in, she prohibited myself as mayor then, and up until she left in 2014, and then the Receivership Transition Administrative Board continued it. But the mayor was not allowed, as charter requires, to give a state of the city. So I'm glad that we have that back, and I hope as it becomes more usual in people's calendars that new mayors will see a little better turnouts than, but there is a lot of good news in Allen Park these days, and I do want to go through that with all of us tonight. The only other thing I would say that resulted in a problem is when they purchased the 104 acres, the result of misstatements that they made in their bond indenture and other places, the United States Security Exchange Commission has restricted comments that the mayor can make about the city's finances. And so due to that, I'm going to make my remarks in the financial area rather general in character. There actually is a hierarchy as to who speaks to the city's finances, and that is the Chief Financial Officer, Bob Cady. If he's not available, then the city administrator, Mark Kibbe, speaks, and I noticed that I'm third on that list, but doesn't mean I can go ahead and give that if they're available. And they are in the room tonight, so they generally are available. So if it's really a tough financial question, turn around and ask them. Nevertheless, I want to talk about the really wonderful progress that we've made in restoring the city's finances and services. The last 3 years has seen the city generate revenues exceeding expenditures to the extent that the balance in the general fund will be on June 30th, 2018, $4,302,798, and that's assuming we have no catastrophes or unexpected expenses that would affect that. The city administrator, Mark Kibbe, and our chief financial officer, Bob Cady, have been instrumental in achieving this turnaround of the city's financial position. For more details about this, please go to our webpage to learn about our 5-year financial plan and our 5-year capital plan. The capital plan, in particular, is really getting us to a position where we are minimizing the risk to the provision of services in water and sewer, streets, lighting, police, and fire. So I think these plans are really having the desired effect, that we're doing much better as we budget our funds and have the equipment that we need for the people to do their jobs effectively. We've also completed a 5-year master plan for the city. Our Parks and Recreation Commission also has a 5-year plan led by our Parks and Recreation Director, Pat Hawkins, and the chairman of the Parks and Rec Commission, Doug Shepard. Next, the accounting firm of Plant Moran just completed an audit of our city accounts for the annual budget year ending June 30th, 2017. And the city was given an unmodified opinion from our auditors. Unmodified is a new term for what was previously referred to as an unqualified opinion. Our unmodified opinion achievement is the best rating one can receive for an audit. So it was very pleasing to make certain there were no problems. Many of us who were in our first terms who are here in the audience tonight will remember we didn't get such a glowing audit when we had that 2012 budget review. Thanks to Bob Cady for his careful work with his department heads to present a budget to the City Council that allows us to improve services in all our departments. Mr. Cady and the city administration and all the department heads have worked hard to obtain a number of federal, state, and county grants that has helped make our balanced budget possible while substantially increasing revenue. Just to break out the various sources of major revenue for us, our real property taxes account for approximately 52% of our revenue. State revenue sources are about 17.83% of our budget. Although the personal property tax has essentially been repealed, the state has been giving cities who apply, and we do apply, some reimbursement for these lost taxes, and that amounts to another 2% of our revenue. The city assesses user fees in all of its departments. The building department generates the most revenue there, followed by Parks and Recreation. These user fees amount to approximately 10.4% of the budget. These four revenue sources mentioned provide approximately 80% of our general fund budget. The remaining balance of 24% comes from other various departments or sources, and also many of them from grants. And these funds are absolutely vital to the success of the city, and each year the grants portions are becoming more difficult for us to obtain. Two final remarks about the current budget before I go on to other matters. First, all employee groups are under contracts expiring June 30th of this year. The one exception is the fire department, with which we are currently in negotiations. Second, the department heads are working on the 2018-19 budget and capital needs. Also, they work with the city administrator and chief financial officer on the extension of the 5-year budget and capital plans, and that would be for years 2023 and 24. After this is done, the city administration and chief financial officer refine the budgets and present it to the council and the public in early April of this year. The state requires us to present the Treasury Department of the state with a balanced budget by May of 2018. And I see that at least the council members haven't fallen asleep with the budget talk, but I think it's important with all the troubles that everyone knew Allen Park was having for several years, that I think we've safely put those problems behind us. And I think we're on the road to a very sustainable community for the foreseeable future. But we do have a lot of things happening in all our departments that really provide better service and reduce expenses where possible. Probably the most exciting project, at least for me who has lived here my whole life, is the new City Hall on Southfield Road. Finally, we're going to see a site that will meet the needs of the city's demands, and also the police department. And the site, as many of you know, was the Oakwood Health Center, and for those of us who are a little older, we remember it when it was the Sweden House. So the property was acquired last summer for the cost of $1.6 million, and construction began in September of 2017. The police station space is about 16,000 square feet, and the City Hall portion is 13,000 square feet. Construction to complete the new City Hall and police station is scheduled to be by May 1st of this year. And the only delay we may have are the jail cells. There are only 2 companies in the United States now providing jail cells, and there's going to be some delay. That shouldn't be a problem for us in moving, because we have a contract with Dearborn, and they're kind enough to extend that lease of their jailer prisoner facilities for the use of our prisoners. And their fees are really very reasonable, $27 per day per prisoner, and there's an additional $3 cleaning fee when a prisoner is released from that his jail cell, or his or her jail cell. And the new facility, I took a tour of it last Friday, and with the project manager and 2 of the site supervisors, along with our building department head, the city administrator, and the city financial officer, and it really was something to go through at this point. I mean, we're seeing drywall going up in places. I mean, we're getting very far along in the building process, and we should be, I would think, within 40 days probably in all of the fits and finishing work. Weather's going to be the problem on the outside as to when we can get back to brick and do some of those things. But even if we have a terrible winter, shouldn't necessarily stop us from moving in. It just won't. We won't have a very nice facade and we would have work going on there while we're using the facility. The Joe Vig, who is the managing contractor for the site, and his people, Dave Boomer, the city administrator, chief financial officer, Mr. Samwa, the architect, all of these people are on site on a continuous basis, seeing that the work moves forward and that we stay on budget, and all those things are being done. So it looks like it's going to be a hugely successful project when we complete it. Currently, at the facility we're in here, we pay $30,000 a month, and so when that terminates, we will have a substantial saving in our budget. It won't be in really $30,000 because we still will have parking lots and lighting and other things that come with the lease, some cleaning, that we will have those expenses with the facility that we have, but we should realize a fairly substantial savings. The project cost, which people ask about all the time, the property cost $1.6 million, and the construction of the facility is estimated to cost $6.2 million. The funds for that are $3 million coming from the general fund, the building department providing $700,000, and then $600,000 coming from the balance that's in the 2010 bond fund that was issued for capital improvements. The balance of $1.9 million will come from the sale of the old City Hall property, which is a front 7 acres. And currently we have a purchase agreement, and the buyer is doing their due diligence. We also have an obligation under title to clear an easement, and we're in the process of working with the owners of the cell tower, which is on the back 4 acres of the property that we will continue to own. And that's where we have the salt dome, the vehicle impound lot, and our repair facilities, but we also have the cell tower, and we have a, isn't that terrible? We get paid for both of these, I should remember them. But it's it's the billboard. Thank you out there in the audience. Somebody should be giving my remarks for me. We have a billboard out there. And those 4 acres are going to, for the time being, remain in the ownership of the city. From the finances and construction, I'd like to begin going through our departments. The police department now has 42 officers, including the chief of police, through patrol officers, and it has 3 administrative staff. And just 2 years ago, the department was staffed at 34 officers and staff. It has been slow progress in finding officers, but Chief Wilkowitz has been resourceful and persistent in finding qualified personnel. He's actually been going into schools where people are training in law enforcement and trying to meet with those people who he thinks should come to Allen Park and work for our force. And he's been building that. I would say that in the report that I last read from the FBI, a city with Allen Park and its close proximity to a large city, they estimate that the proper sizing for it should be about 45 officers. So whether we decide as a council to go that high again, I don't know, but I think we'd look at least for one more officer that we could use for drug enforcement work, which we had to stop several years ago when we reduced our staff so much. The chief has increased training for all officers and improved their equipment. We are now trying to find money to provide all our officers with body cameras, and this has been or is becoming the common practice across the country in order to better protect law enforcement officers as well as the public citizens they encounter and verify the actions of both sides. And I knew one of the things when I looked at it that was so positive, when you get a citizen's complaint against an officer, it often on average takes 6 to 7 months to resolve. With body cameras, they're finding the average resolution of that is in about 2 weeks. And well over 90% of the resolutions favor the police officer when people look at the video on that. So I think it has a real positive thing because it stops these things from lingering in the papers and the media with people having whatever suspicions they have about the incident. The next largest department is the fire department with 24 personnel. The fire department did 3,800 runs in 2017. Fortunately, less than 12 were structure fires. Most runs are for our citizens and are accidents on our roads requiring immediate first aid and triage treatment. Our fire personnel have the highest level of training for emergency treatment, and they do train continuously. This department is also part of the Downriver Mutual Aid and trains in hazmat exercises. It assists in call-outs to other communities, and it assists in arson investigations. The city's third largest department is our Department of Public Service, affectionately known as DPS. This department, which is responsible for several city services, some of which include repairing roads, snow removal, street sweeping, tree trimming and removal, maintaining street lighting in cooperation with DTE, and maintaining and repairing water and sewer lines. In the last year, DPS has installed over 7/10 of a mile in new water lines and sewers in each of those categories. They are responsible for over 1 mile of new roads being done pursuant to the 2 mills residents voted for in 2015. 1/2 mile of new roads from the gas tax, plus repair, striping, and cracking and crack sealing of roads are done by them. This department, with just 16 people, performs a lot of work, as we have about 100 miles of roads, 200 miles of water lines, and 200 miles of sewers, 11,000 homes, and about 1,000 commercial and industrial structures to service. And Tom Murray is to be commended as our director, and his personnel do a wonderful job for us. Next, our Parks and Recreation Department has an upgraded community center and ice arena, providing a better experience for all our residents and visitors who use these facilities. About 3 years ago, Pat Hawkins, the director for Parks and Recreation, had to take these facilities back from an outside company who let the facilities get very run down and services deteriorate severely. He and his staff are to be congratulated for the renovations and improvements to the community center and generally all of the facilities they're responsible for in our city. We also continue to see our city parks updated and improved with new park equipment at 6 parks currently. And I'm very pleased to say that we expect 2 more parks will see upgrades and improvements this year. Our Wayne County Commissioner, Gary Warrencheck, has been very supportive every year that I've been mayor in working to improve our parks. And this in turn improves our community. The county has provided $60,000 to $80,000 a year for park improvements over the last 6 years. And it's chiefly used for playground equipment that comes from the county. And this past year, the playground equipment company that we've been buying most of the equipment from contributed an additional $70,000 to make all of the improvements there. So it was a really large investment. And the county was very cooperative because they had to he had to reach into a different budget year, which all of us who are elected officials get nervous when we start using other budget years to make payments for things now. But he did it and got the money for us so that we had that playground for the whole summer rather than losing it for a whole year. And I'm very appreciative of the help that he's given us. I hope that everybody, as they drive about and look at our parks, will really notice the improvements. And maintenance and upkeep have been nothing short of phenomenal. In addition to the employee upkeep, we've had charitable civic organizations really pitch in to help maintain or improve the parks. They contribute money, they help on projects, they provide citywide programs. the Allen Park Athletic Club, Kiwanis, Rotary, Allen Park Civic Funds, to name a few, have been very substantial and continuous assistance to our Parks and Recreation program. But there are many private citizens who volunteer their time to better our parks and community, and all of it's instrumental in making this a place that's much more attractive in which to live and conduct our businesses. The City Building Department oversees all new construction, reconstruction, and any building work requiring permits. Additionally, they are responsible for ordinance enforcement. The City of Allen Park now has 3 ordinance officers, with 2 being added this last 12 months. The city also added a city planning group, Carlisle Workman, to assist the department. And we have the engineering firm of C.E. Raines that also has been brought aboard to provide additional professional help. The building officials are responsible for inspecting residential rentals, as well as review and approve or deny permits for all work that is being done on various properties throughout our city. Just to mention the treasurer and the clerk's office, the treasurer's department is responsible for fund collection and keeping track of all city revenue, and the clerk is responsible for all records and all elections. Their budgets, I think, are reasonably modest. The clerk's is about $190,000. It may get a little higher in an election year, but there always seems to be an election these days. And the treasurer's budget is about $134,000 a year. The assessing department has 1 part-time employee, and the city employs an outside contractor to handle our tax tribunal cases and the preparation of our tax rolls. This is a series of tasks complicated by the Headley Amendment and Proposition A that limited valuation increases. We are trying to automate the system further so that we can be more efficient and access the records and the changes to the records as sales to properties and that occur all the time. Ms. Jans and Mr. Fuco are very experienced, and they do a fine job with this essential work for the city. The assessor told me that sales increased for the 2017 year 3.3% for residential, and 3.6% for business. This is quite a bit lower than we've had in the 3 prior years to that, which were all above 8%, but maybe that explains why it's moderated somewhat after 3 years of moving ahead quite substantially. Our library has its own millage for its operation. Ms. Blakeney is the head librarian. She, along with her staff, provide a host of services that are quite a bit different than what I remember from our library when I was a young person. Not only are the books checked in and out, but there are computer classes, there are computer services that they provide. There are reading programs for preschoolers through senior citizens. They have various types of reading clubs. And if you haven't been to our library lately, you really should come in and check it out. I think it can be a fun time to go there for you. The parking lot has been repaved, and we've reconfigured the area so it's easier to get into and out of the library, and it's much easier to park. And that very large hole that was in the middle of the center of the parking lot's gone, which seemed to take about 25% of our parking at one time. The Downtown Development Authority also has separate funding mechanism, and its director is Jennifer Kibbe. Its mission is to maintain and improve the city's business districts for the benefit of the business owners and our residents. It does this with matching 50-50 facade grants to business owners and provides architectural advice by a licensed architect for businesses considering improving their facilities. The DDA also holds special events for the community, such as car shows, Touch a Truck, Made in Michigan, the weekly farmers market that's held in the summer and fall. They've joined our Allen Park Police Department in providing a crime prevention program for businesses. They've helped the city in funding with new barricades purchased for special events held by ourselves as well as the DDA. And in the past, they did very large projects which they bonded to do the improvements on Ecorse Road, Park Avenue, and North Allen Road. And those have all been, 2 of them have been completed just very recently, Ecorse Road and Park Avenue. Next, our 24th District Court, which is a joint responsibility for the cities of Allen Park and Melvindale, supports themselves through fines on civil infractions and misdemeanors and fees collected from civil cases. Their collection provides to Allen Park about $500,000 a year for the general fund annually. It's a substantial help and much appreciated. Finally, our historical house at the corner of Park and Inglewood, which has a very small budget and is managed by our Historical Commission, provides our city's history. Sharon Broglin, its director since its inception, is a treasure trove of information about our city. She has written 2 books about Allen Park. They are open Wednesday afternoons and for special programs. So if you ever have a question, comment, issue, there are a number of ways to get the comment heard, get the question answered. You can contact us by phone, or you can visit our website. And the website particularly has a lot of information about cities and the department services, and for reporting city issues such as ordinance violations, repairs, or damages to public roads and places. We have our Click Fix app on our website. Simply download it, click on it, and report a matter, and your matter will be answered and attended to. Besides our web page, we have a Facebook page and a Nextel emergency notice system to help keep all of us informed. All of these departments, department heads, directors, employees, and staff are responsible for everything that makes living here a great experience. With that, I thought it was a half hour. It was 28 minutes. So, I will take questions, and if I can't answer the question, there is paper and a pen there where you can leave your name and write your question there, and I will try and get an answer to you or tell us what we think anyway. So I know many of you work here, and so you know you have all the answers. But is there anybody that has any question for me? Yes.
To what extent does Melvindale's ticket revenue help ensure the profitability of the court?
The division of responsibility for the court is 2/3, 1/3. So, and that was created where we expected Melvindale to have about 1/3 of the revenue, and we would generate 2/3. We have 2/3 of the expenses, therefore, and they have 1/3. And that's been pretty close. I do not think since 2014 we've revisited that with the manager of the court to see if that's still true. The bonds have all been paid on the court now, and so the income is a little bit more assured, because we didn't have to make that about $150,000 payment that we had to make the last 4 or 5 years after we had refinanced the original bonds to build the building. And so, but it's a question that does get periodically reviewed, and I guess it'll get reviewed here again at some point. Anybody else?
Well, does their ticket revenue?
Well, I don't know that currently. I don't know if they're higher than 1/3, we're higher than 2/3, you know. But the split and the obligations of the two communities for the court, if something should happen that suddenly we didn't have any people creating mischief in the city, and therefore the ticket and revenue fell way off, because the civil litigation fees for filing a case there are by far and away the small portion of revenue that's generated. Most of it is fines from civil infractions or misdemeanors. And so you just have to see. And it will, you'll never hit it exactly on the head, but the cities have worked together a long time, since the district court came into being, which I think was about 1992, if my memory serves me.
Well, I know with the new technology, they can scan license plates in real time and find out rapidly if a plate is expired for lack of insurance. and you have the corridor of Schaefer and Greenfield between 75 and 94. And the Melvindale PD has quite successfully, maybe that's not the right word, been able to pull over people who have expired plates due to lack of insurance. And that results in impounding a lot of things.
Sure.
So they have a unique geographical, because they're right by the Detroit border.
One of the things that we do in our police department, and that people may not realize, I had them say, well, you're very slow in approaching a car that's been stopped. We run every plate on a car that's stopped. We want to know if there are warrants on that car, its owner. Is there anything that would be unusual that an officer should approach with a different attitude? And so we have those same capabilities in our cars today. But we just have to look and see, where the cases originate from, and they do calculate it, and but I don't think we've sat down with Melvindale and looked at the average for a couple of years to see if that makes sense to continue under the same formula.
I have another question.
Sure.
The crime that occurs on the Hill due to shoplifting, it seems to be maybe made worse by the need for money by the opioid epidemic. What approach is the police department trying to take to deal with that ongoing theft at the big box stores?
Well, the court, when they get an addicted personality or somebody that looked like they were on some sort of a drug when they committed a crime, will really have that thought process and evaluation to determine whether they can get them to a facility to have treatment to, if they're addicted, get them away from their addiction. Other than that, the police officer's job is to come up, find the person who's violated the law, and bring him in, have him charged, and then turn him over to the court system. So we do have a program. This past year, Sergeant Albright has gone to all the schools to talk about opioids and particularly marijuana. I assume we will continue that this year. It's very important, since in November we will have on the ballot a recreational marijuana item, which will constitutionally, if it passes, allow the use of recreational marijuana. Now, having said that, President Trump has reversed President Obama's Attorney General direction. President Obama had said that any state that had legalized marijuana to whatever extent, the Attorney General for the United States would not bring any actions. The present session, Mr. Sessions, our present Attorney General, has said that no longer is the law, and they will leave the states' U.S. attorneys to determine how they want to proceed in their states, because we have 9 states or 10 states now where recreational marijuana can be legally consumed. I belong to the Health Law Institute of the State Bar. In March we have our annual meeting. We always have the U.S. attorneys from the eastern and western districts of the state come, and we always, the big issue has been for the last couple of years, is always the discussion of opioids and marijuana, and what do we do to try and contain the situation and help the people who have fallen to these addictions. So I will be going this March because I'm very interested in what they're doing, and then of course what the state has been doing. The state of California has new rules or regulations as to how they're going to contract or regulate the marijuana. How do they measure its efficacy? How do they measure if there are contaminants in there that are bad for people's health. You know, this is not a FDA-approved drug, so it's fraught with real peril for people who use it.
Now, when Taylor got the new police chief, one of the things he said when he took over was that much of the crimes against property in the city were driven by people who were seeking funding for their drug habits. Does Allen Park continue to see property crimes rise because of the increase in addictions? People are cruising down streets in subdivisions, which is opening car doors, looking to steal things. Do the property crimes continue to be impacted by the opioid addiction?
Well, I think they are impacted. I can't say for Allen Park because I haven't heard the chief give us a statistic to say that he has seen an increase. I will say this from the fire department. Fentanyl deaths in Allen Park this year were at least 8 as of the end of November. The prior year, as I remember, were 4, and the year before that were 2. Fentanyl is really a frightening drug that's out there, and people don't realize it. I don't know if anybody saw the article on the police officer, I believe that was in Pennsylvania 3 months ago. Somebody says, you got dust on your clothes, and he dusted it, stuff went up, he inhaled it, and it killed him. And it was a fentanyl that had got on. He had administered Narcan to save a person's life, and somehow this ended up getting on his clothing. I don't know if they had additional drugs on them that he contacted. I don't know. Well, Narcan, it has another Noxolone, I think is the other name that you'll see in the cars. And our police department has said now we're carrying 2 of those Narcan units in every car instead of 1, because sometimes it can take more than the 2 capsules that are inhaled to bring a person out of this induced overdose. It's a serious problem. I always say it's kind of a young person's problem. Been a wrong practice as a lawyer a long time. I've not really known any old addicts. You don't live to be an old addict. You just die of an overdose at some point. It's a terrible thing when people get caught on it. I don't have an answer. Yes.
Earlier, I believe you made the statement that Allen Park gets $500,000 worth of revenue through the court.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Is that monitored on a yearly basis, or?
They provide a budget, and they get audited as part of our audit. So, yes. I think they get audited on our audit, or they have a separate audit. They may have a separate audit that gets rolled into our audit, but gets reviewed by Plant Moran. So, but that's been pretty consistent. And also, they have to file a report with the State Court Administrator's Office every year, and part of it in determining how many judges will be placed in a particular court depends upon the caseload that court has. So you'll see in heavier jurisdictions with heavier caseloads, they'll have more judges. And I honestly don't know how the court makes the determination, but it is made, I think, on information given by the State Court Administrator's Office to the Supreme Court, and they decide the changes. Are there any other questions? Well, I really do thank all of you for coming out, and hearing this. I would say that we will be on WOW and Comcast tomorrow, probably around 2 o'clock, and it will also be on our website. So thank you all.